Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a quick chat about Dominaria United Limited set review. Dominaria's been out now for roughly about a week or so, I'd say. And I'm sure plenty of you guys have gotten into Arena, into your local game store, played a bunch of games, especially Limited, especially some Sealed. Love me some Sealed. But today I wanted to take a quick walkthrough, just some very generic ideas of what we're trying to do in this Dominaria United set when it comes to a limited perspective as far as Sealed and draft. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, I'm really good at drafting. I'm really good at building Sealed decks, and I'm sure you are. But for those who aren't, that's why we're doing this. We're going to take a quick look through all of the commons and uncommons and just get an idea of truly what is a base good card and what might lure you into something that is maybe not so good, and you could probably find a better replacement for. So I tend to stay away from the very common themey builds because, yes, as fun as they are and sometimes as strong as they are, they tend to lure you in with false hope that you're just going to get it every single draft or every single Sealed, and oftentimes that is not the case. Because I promise you, when you are at the table, you are not the only one looking for a Defender build. Which, the jury's still out on that one for me, so I'm not going to say too much more on that. But aside from Defenders, there's the obvious Instants and Sorcery build, which is a very common look right now. Esper seems to be having a very good theme build as far as Limited goes. Just a normal base creature build seems really strong right now. Really can't go wrong with it. So I'm here today. We'll step by step walk through these and we'll take a look at them and discuss them. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. I really want to have an actual chat about this. That way I can find out what you guys are seeing and what works for you guys, and vice versa. What maybe doesn't work for me, you know? And maybe even some of the cards that you didn't see made the list that you really felt have changed your Limited games, or maybe something that I have on the list that you aren't appreciative of. So definitely leave a comment down below, and let's get started. So again, I'm going to run through these pretty quick. There's a bunch of them, and there's a lot of good cards in this set. The commons and uncommons of Dominaria United are actually very strong, and a lot of them just on their base power are strong. They don't necessarily need to be down a simple theme. This set seems to be pretty heavily based upon your rares. Bombs seem to be kind of usually win you the games. Whoever gets to their bomb first tends to win. But this set, the base and bulk of those cards seem to be very strong, and you can build a really solid base deck. And just hope to find your rare, you know, and eventually that'll get the job done for you. So we'll start with white here. We'll take a look at Runic Shot. For 1 mana, sorcery, and a kicker blue, you can destroy target tap creature. If the spell is kicked, scry 2. Obviously, most removal in this set, or any set for Limited, that for that matter, is very strong. So any removal at all, white tends to have a lot of removal in this set. It's a great pickup. Easy scry 2. Yes, it's a sorcery, but trust me, for 1 mana, you'll get some use out of it. Second look here is Samite Herbalist for 2 mana, and for a 2/1 for 2 mana, we get a human cleric that comes in, and every time he's tapped, you gain 1 life and you scry 1. And list is still around, crewing is still a thing, and even just swinging out and gaining a life and scrying 2 with a 2 power is very strong, especially in this Limited. Next, we'll take a look at Phyrexian Missionary for 2 mana. You get a 2/3 lifelink with a kicker of 1 and a black that says, when Missionary enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Seems fine. I mean, there's really nothing to say here. It's equal powered over toughness for its mana cost, plus a kicker, plus it comes in with lifelink just on its own. It falls into the 2-drop spot very easily without having to stretch to make that kicker work. You'll still have a good time with this card. We'll move on to Prayer Binding. It is a 4 mana enchantment with Flash, which is awesome. So basically instant speed. When Prayer of Binding enters the battlefield, exile 1 target non-land permanent an opponent controls until Prayer Binding leaves the battlefield. You gain 2 life. Really nothing to say here. If you look at the other black spell that is an instant speed, it is also 4 mana. This just does the same thing. Yes, it leaves a permanent on the battlefield behind that they can maybe potentially remove, but more often than not, they're not gonna. We'll take a look at Resolute Reinforcements here. For 1 and a white, we get a 1/1, again with Flash. When it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 soldier token. I mean, aggro for flash for 2 mana. It's basically raise the alarm on a creature. Can't go wrong. Love aggro in this limited set. Easily falls into the 2-drop spot here without any issue. Next, we'll take a look at Argivian Phalanx for 6 mana. You get a 4/4 that with Vigilance. It says this spell costs 1 less for each creature you control. As we just spoke, white and aggro kind of go hand in hand in this set. There's really nothing wrong with that. And I honestly truly love all of these creatures that have a cost reducer effect to them. There's really no point in this game, even late game, and you're casting these things for 2 mana, sometimes 1 mana. They're great. Anytime you can reduce a cost and get a big giant dude for 1 mana sometimes, it's worth the risk. Next here, we'll take a look at Benella Sleeper for 2 mana. You get a 3/1 with a kicker of black that says when Benella Sleeper enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, each player sacrifices a creature. Again, you're in white. Oftentimes you're going to have a token that you're willing to sacrifice. Oftentimes they are not going to have a token that they're willing to sacrifice, which means that you're going to end up taking away one of their main base creatures. Again, you don't have to do that kicker ability, so it just comes in as a 2 mana 3/1. What's not to love? Get aggressive with it. Next here we'll take a look at Captain's Call, which is a 4 mana sorcery. Create 3/1/1 tokens. Again, white really offers itself to aggro and tokens, and there's ways to pump those tokens within the set. Also, there's a couple creatures that say whenever a token enters the battlefield, create an extra copy of that. Going wide and limited is never a bad thing. They're great for blockers. They're great for just overall swarming your opponent, and eventually they can't handle it. There's really nothing wrong with this little aggro card. I'd pick it up if I were you. Next, we'll take a look at Take Up the Shield as a 2 mana instant. Put a 1/1 counter on target creature. It gains lifelink and indestructible till end of turn. There is a black counterpart of this that I also love. These two not only pump, the other one's Death Touch. We'll get there. But the ability to give indestructible and a lifelink has saved me more than once in my limited games. It's a great little surprise. Acts almost in the same realm as like Hexproof, but maybe even a little bit better because you can get more aggressive with your creatures and gain life in the long run and save a creature. Pretty good little protection spell. I do like it. Next, we'll take a look at Citizen's Arrest here as a 3 mana 1 and 2 whites enchantment that says when it enters the battlefield, exile target a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. Again, kind of a distant call from Prayer's Binding, but a 3 mana. It's basically an Oblivion Ring. Again, white has a good set amount of removal spells, and removal unlimited is kind of where your mind should be at. Next on the list here, we'll look at Destroy Evil. Again, as a 2 mana instant. Choose one. You can either destroy target creature with toughness 4 or greater, or you can destroy target enchantment. 2 very useful keywords. Again, we just looked at a number of white enchantments that say exile target creature. This will free up one of your creatures, or it'll take one of their giant green drops away. It's a very versatile little spell. I do like it. Again, white removal. Love it. Next, we'll take a look here at Argivian Cavalier, which is a 3 mana 2/2 with Enlist that says when it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 soldier token. Again, just building on the aggro theme, plus the Enlist never hurt. It's a good little 3-drop. Now that we've kind of flown through our white here, we'll take a look at red. We're going to start with Flowstone Infusion. For 1 red mana, we get an instant that says target creature gets +2/-2 until end of turn. Again, a nice little pseudo-versatile spell. You can either take away a 2 toughness creature from them, or late game, or if you need to kill something and give it your creatures a pump, give them a pump. Why not? We'll take a look at Yavimaya Steel Crusher. It is a 2 mana 2/2 with Enlist. That for 1 colorless mana, you can sacrifice them to destroy target artifact. Again, we've had this discussion before that there's not a ton of artifacts. If you haven't seen this one before, definitely go check out my other set review. But just being a 2/2 for 2 with the ability to take some artifact out of the game with Enlist, again, a very versatile 2-drop card. It does multiple things for a very low cast on curve. Everybody's favorite here, Lightning Strike, 2 mana instant spell that says deals 3 damage to any target. Just going to leave it at that. Removal, creature, planeswalker. It does a lot. Definitely have it in your decks. We got Twin Inferno here for 2 mana instant spell that says choose one. When you cast your next instant or sorcery spell, you may copy it and choose new targets for the copy, or you give one of your creatures double strike. Again, versatile, multiple uses and multiple points of the game, and interacts with multiple cards in your deck. Love it. Heirloom Battle Hymn for 3 mana instant. 1 white kicker. Heirloom Battle Hymn deals 4 damage to a creature or planeswalker. If the spell was kicked, gain 4 life. Again, the removal spell for just a base 3 mana. 4 damage gets you a long ways. And for 1 extra mana late game, that life gain will help you out a bunch. We'll take a look here. Molten Monstrosity, which is an 8-drop 5/5 that says this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. It has trample. Again, with the list being around, any creatures that make it through combat that were listed just makes this thing so cheap. All these reducer spells, love them. Definitely have them in your decks. Electrostatic Infantry here for 2 mana. We get a 1/2 with trample. Doesn't seem like much, but whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a 1/1 counter on Electrostatic Infantry. Again, there's many builds. Instants and sorceries are definitely a build in Dominaria United. Also, just nonchalantly casting instants and sorceries in your deck that you already have gives him a buff. Eventually he'll grow to be out of control, and he's a long-term threat. Good on turn 2. And finally for red here, we get a look at Phoenix Chick for 1 red mana. You get a Flying Haste 1/1. I got a lot of hype of this thing before we got into this set. Phoenix Chick can't block, and it says whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, you may pay a red and a red. If you do, return Phoenix Chick from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking with a 1/1 counter on it. Good in the early game, gets a lot of flying in, very good evasion, especially for turn 1. Late game comes back as a 2/2 flyer. What's not to love? Quickly moving on here to black, we're going to start with Writhing Necromass for 7 mana. You get a 5/5 with Death Touch that says this spell costs 1 less for each creature card in your graveyard. Again, great. Love these reducers. In Limited, you're going to be playing a lot of creatures. A lot of creatures are going to be dying. I've had many games where this guy's coming for 2 mana or less. Definitely put him in your deck. Ah, yes. Shadow Prophecy for 3 mana, instant, and Domain. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. Put up to 2 of them into your hand, the rest into your graveyard. You lose 2 life. Okay, so this may not sound very good, but especially in Dominaria United, most decks are going to be playing 3 mana. So at the very least, you're looking 3 deep, and you're choosing 2 cards to put them in your hand. And if you have a graveyard build, such as with, I don't know, Writhing Necromass, you may want to put a bunch of creatures in your graveyard. The ability to both fill the graveyard and fill your hand, again being mildly versatile, it's a better than you think draw card. Definitely try it once and let me know what you think. We'll move on to Cut Down here, which is a 1 mana instant. Again, everybody knows this card, but it says destroy target creature with total power and toughness 5 or less. Okay, so we're talking a 1/4, we're talking a 4/1, a 2/3, 3/2, 0/5 wall. Those definitely exist in this. Again, it's being a removal spell. It's hard to find in Limited. This is one of the better ones to take out a lot of early game creatures and definitely keep the momentum and tempo on your side. We'll take a look at Phyrexian Vivisector here. For 2 mana, you get a 2/2. It says whenever a creature you control dies, scry 1. Again, this is limited. It's not limited to just non-token creatures, so tokens are included. So when you start talking those soldiers and aggro decks, you're going to have a lot of creatures die even just once or twice throughout a game. It'll pay off dividends for you. Even just 1 scry is more than enough, and it scries on itself. We'll take a look at Tribute to Urborg for 2 mana instant with a kicker of a 1 and a blue. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. If that spell was kicked, that creature gets an additional -1/-1 until end of turn for each instance and sorcery in your graveyard. Again, early game for 2 mana, -2/-2 does a lot of damage, especially in this set. But late game, if you're in that instance and sorcery kind of build and your graveyard's full as is, it'll pack a real punch against some of those bigger creatures. Don't overlook it. Phyrexian Rager for 3 mana, you get a 2/2 that says when he enters the battlefield, you draw a card and lose a life. I mean, 3 mana for a body and a draw card? Yes, you lose life, but come on. The upside's there. Drawing cards never hurt anybody, and a creature to boot, it's good stuff. We'll take a look at Extinguish the Light. Poor Jaya. Here's that 4 mana instant black spell we were talking about. That says destroy target creature or planeswalker. If its mana value is 3 or less, you gain 3 life. Instant speed kill cards, good stuff. Upside of potentially gaining 3 life, never hurt anyone. Good removal spell, instant speed, we love it. Bone Splinters for 1 mana sorcery. As an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature. Destroy target creature. Yes, sure, it's a sorcery. Yes, you have to get rid of one of your creatures, but in most circumstances, those little guys, they're not going anywhere. Sacrifice one of them, take away a 7/7 worm. You'll appreciate it later. We'll take a look at Shieldred's Restoration here. There might be some people on the fence about this one. It's a 4 mana sorcery with a kicker of 2 and a white. It says return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. If this spell was kicked, you gain life equal to that card's mana cost. Otherwise, you lose that much life. Be sure to exile Shieldred's Restoration after cast. If you need a big fatty on the field, it's definitely worth it. Late game, which most limited games tend to go, you're more than likely going to get to 7 mana, so it turns itself into get a big creature back and gain a huge amount of life. Especially with these creatures that come in as mana cost reducers, you'll gain a lot of life off of them. Believe me, I've won games with this thing. We'll take a look at Braid's Frightful Return here, which is a 3 mana saga with read ahead that says for the first chapter you may sacrifice a creature. If you do, each opponent discards a card. Second chapter, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. And for the final chapter, target opponent may sacrifice a non-land, non-token permanent. If they don't, they lose 2 life and you draw a card. Really, every step of this is good. Granted, it doesn't really interact with their field much, but if you're willing to sacrifice a creature, you'll get them back on the second chapter, and eventually they'll lose 2 life and you'll draw a card. Not really a backbreaker, but it's a good spot if you need to fill that 3-drop. And finally, we'll take a look at Battle Rage Blessing for 2 mana, instant speed. Target creature gains Death Touch and Indestructible until end of turn. Okay, this is the counterpart to the white one that I was talking about. Again, the Indestructible at instant speed is great stuff. There's a lot of just straight up destroy creatures or burn creatures. Not a ton of exile except for in white. But also, now you can make your 1/1 aggro dude have Death Touch, survive, and take out one of their bigger creatures without them even know it was coming. We will quickly move on to blue here. We'll start with Founding the Third Path. You get a 2-drop saga, again with read ahead. For the first one, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana 1 or 2 from your hand without paying its mana cost. So right there, you're already basically paying, it's a cantrip. You're paying 2 to get a free 2 mana spell out of your hand. It's good stuff. For the second one, target player mills 4 cards. May not be necessary, but sometimes it's good to fill your own graveyard. And for the third one, exile target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard, copy it, and you may cast a copy. Again, it's just recasting that spell that you cast on the first one. Definitely put in your blue decks. It's well worth it, and trust me, you'll want to play with it. One of the cards you may want to cast with that saga is Impulse for 2 mana, instant speed. Look at the top 4 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your in the bottom of your library in any order. Again, digging 4 deep and picking the card you want. It's good stuff. Multiple casts with the saga. We'll take a look at Impede Momentum for 2 mana sorcery. Target creature, tap target creature, and put 3 stun counters on it. That right there is crazy. Being able to take their biggest creature out of play for at least 3 turns is good stuff. But then also on top of that, you get a Scry. Why not? Tolarian Terror is our 7 mana blue reducer. It comes in as a 5/5 and ward 2. Again, this spell costs 1 less for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. There's that instants and sorceries in your graveyard thing that you might want to end up doing. And again, more often than not, you're probably going to be casting this thing for 5 mana at the very least. And there, it's good stuff. It's common. Pick it up. Take a look at Frost Fist Strider is a 5 mana 4/4 with ward 2 again. When he enters the battlefield, tap target creature and opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. Stun counters are pretty great. Again, takes that creature out of play for at least a turn or 2. What's not to love? It's a good 5 mana 4/4 with ward. 4 power does a lot of damage in this set. Take a look at Battlewing Mystic here as our 2 mana 2/1 flying with a kicker of red. When Battlewing Mystic enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, discard your hand, then draw 2 cards. Early game, you get a 2/1 for 2 for flying. Late game, you get to refill your hand with 2 cards. Love it. Joint Exploration here is a 2 mana instant speed with a kicker green that says scry 2, then draw a card. If the spell was kicked, you may put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. It does a lot of stuff. Very least it'll do is scry 2 and draw a card. Really nothing wrong with that. The upside is that it puts a land from your hand and ramps you. Definitely be playing this card. We'll take a look at Shore Up here as a 1 mana instant. Target creature you control gets +1/+1 till end of turn, gains hexproof, and untap it. Protects your creature if need be from any of those enchantment spells or kill spells that we were talking about, but also is a great supplies blocker. Definitely use that as a combat trick. Love it. Protect the Negotiators as a 2 mana instant speed, again with Kicker of White. If the spell is kicked, create a 1/1 soldier token. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 1 for each creature you control. Again, very versatile. Creates a 1/1 soldier for blocking in the case that you need it. Also, just a counter spell for creatures. I mean, it does both. Gives you creatures and counters as well. I do like it. We'll quickly shift to green here. Going to start with Bog Badger. Love him. 3 mana, 3/3 with a Kicker of Black. When he enters the battlefield, if he was kicked, creatures you control gain menace till end of turn. He's a 3/3 for 3, or he gives you the chance to win the game on the spot. Terror Sunder, there's really nothing to say here. I did it in my set review. It's a great card. It's up there and almost should be main board in some of the standard decks. For 2 mana instant speed, exile target artifact or enchantment. You can kick it for 1 and a black. If it was kicked, exile target non-land permanent instead. So that means planeswalkers, that means creatures. Very versatile. Great early game, especially in some of these enchantment decks being out there right now. Great late game. Takes out the biggest creature. Yavimaya Iconoclast, can't say it, is a 2 mana 3/2, again overpowered for its cost, with trample, again, love it. Comes in with a Kicker of Red. If it enters the battlefield and it was kicked, it gains +1/+1 till end of turn and gains haste. So usually on turn 3, you're swinging with a 4/3 trample, haste. Love it. The Weatherseed Treaty is a 3 mana green saga. Again, with read ahead, the first one says search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped. Good ramp. For the second one, create a 1/1 green sapperling token, creatures. And for the last one, target creature you control gets a +X/+X and gains trample till end of turn, where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. It does a lot of stuff. Late game, you're probably going to be targeting some of your bigger creatures with as much mana you have. Early game, gets you that ramp. Gaia's Might is a 1 mana instant speed for Domain. Target creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn for each basic land among lands you control. Again, very similar to the end of that saga, but again, it's a great surprise. Just wish it gave trample, but it does enough. Colossal Growth here definitely made my list as a 2 mana instant speed Kicker for red. Target creature you control gets +3/+3 till end of turn. Again, gets around a lot of those burn spells. If the spell is kicked, instead of that creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn and gains trample and haste. It is sometimes a game winner. It definitely protects your creatures in a duel of the combat damage. Just good all around for green decks. Take a look at Scout the Wilderness as a 3 mana sorcery. Kicker of 1 and a white. Search a library for a basic land card. Put it on the battlefield tapped. Good for ramp. But if it was kicked, create 2 1/1 soldier tokens. There's your aggro. So turn 5, you're getting a land and 2 creatures that can either be blockers or help you win the game. Territorial Marrow, really nothing to say here. For 5 mana, you get an XX, where Domain, Territorial Marrow's power and toughness are equal to twice the number of basic lands you control. Really nothing to say here. Even if you're in 3 color, he comes in as the 6/6. Normally, if you're playing him, you're looking to play, 5 lands, so he comes in as a 5 mana 10/10. We love it. Take a look at Slimefoot's Survey here as a 5 mana sorcery, again with Domain. Search your library for up to 2 land cards that each have a basic land type. That can be tri-lands. It's crazy. Put them into the battlefield tap, then shuffle. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. Put one of them onto the top of your library and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Again, this gets you Domain on its own. If you go find a tri-land and maybe another tri-land that fills that gap and gets you to scry the top X of your library, I'd say play it if you can, especially in Limited. Linebreaker Baloth is a 5 mana 4/5 with Enlist. Can't Can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Again, puts a lot of strain on the opponent. They got to make sure they have up the right blockers and can be a huge, massive enlist creature. We do like it. Tail Swipe is a 1 green instant. Love those 1 green instants. Choose target creature you control and target creature you don't control. If you cast this during your main phase, the creature you control gets +1/+1 till end of turn. Then those creatures fight. It's a 1 mana fight spell. Good. It's one of the few removal spells in green. Look to play it. Comes in useful. Elfheim Worm here is a 5 mana 5/4 with Vigilance and Trample. Just going to leave it there. It's a good 5-drop. Floriferous Vinewall is a 2 mana 0/2 with Defender. Hooray, Defender decks. But not in a Defender deck. It definitely still lets you look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a land card from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library. It's a great mana fixer, especially when you're going for domain. 6 cards is a lot. Llanowar Stalker is a 1 mana 1/1 that says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Fantastic on turn 1 because more than likely every turn you're going to be casting a creature. By turn 2 he's swinging it as a 2/1. We love it. Snare Spider is a 2 mana 1/3 with Reach. It says whenever he blocks a creature with flying, he gets +2/+0 till end of turn. Flying is still a thing, especially in this set. I've had plenty of people overlook the Reach ability, and he makes for a great blocker. Bite Down here is our 2 mana instant speed. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. Again, this is one of those few removal spells in green, and it saves your creature and deals that damage to them. I'd look to play it. I do like it. Magnagoth Sentry is a 4 mana 4/4 with Reach. Again, Reach is a very sneaky ability. I've had many people run into this, unbeknownst to them. Plus just being equal power toughness for the cost. Can't go wrong. And of course in Dominaria United we got a good look at a bunch of multicolored cards. Again, I'm just going to touch on the commons and uncommons. We'll run through it quick. These will be more determined by the build that you're trying for and usually set up by the rare that you're looking to play. Look for these cards if you're in these colors. Otherwise, don't. We'll start with Baird. Argivian Recruiter is our Boros, red and a white, 2/2 that says at the beginning of your end step, if you control a creature with power greater than its base power, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. Okay, so if you enlist or if you have a team pumper there, that's kind of where you'll just keep making creatures and keep adding to that aggro build. Boros likes it. We'll take a look at Niall Avsova Aeronaut is our 4 mana Simic 2/4 with flying for domain. When she deals combat damage to a player, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. Put up to 1 of them on top of your library and the rest in the bottom of your library in any order. Then if there are 5 basic land types among lands you control, draw a card. Again, really playing heavily into that domain stuff, and it allows you to fix those manas early game as long as she can get through damage. Look at Aaron Benalia's Ruin is a white black for 3/3. He has Menace, legendary creatures of course. For black and a white you can tap him to sacrifice another creature and put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. Again, plays really well into that aggro build. Sacrifice 1 to help the many. Rada Coalition Warlord is a 4 mana Gruul. For 3/3, you have Domain that says when she becomes tapped, another target creature you control gets +X/+X, where X is the number of land types you control. Again, enlist is the thing, why not double enlist? We'll take a look at Lagomos. Hand of the Hatred is a 3 mana Rakdos 1/3 that says at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 2/1 red elemental creature token with trample and haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. You may tap him to search your library for a card and put it into your hand, then shuffle. Activate only if 5 or more creatures have died this turn. A little bit harder to use the second ability, but a lot of people use her with our next card, Garna here. You'll see why. Garna says, Garna the Bloodfist of the Keld is again a Rakdos 4 mana for 1 red, black. Comes in as a 4/3. She says whenever another creature controlled dies, draw a card if it was attacking. Otherwise, she deals 1 damage to each opponent. You pair her with Lagomos, you'll always have a creature attacking. You'll always be drawing a card. Great little the combo wombo. Rona Shieldred's Faithful is our Dimir 4-drop. For 3/4, she says, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, each opponent loses a life. You may cast Rona Shieldred's Faithful from your graveyard by discarding 2 cards in addition to paying its other mana costs. Just to sit there and always be draining your opponent, really can't go wrong, especially in Esper. You're going to be playing a lot of instants and sorceries. We'll take a look at Ellis Ilkor Sadistic Pilgrim is our Orzhov 2/2. He has Death Touch that says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life. Whenever another creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life. Again, kind of a pseudo Blood Artist here, but he has Death Touch. What's not to love? We'll take a look at Bortuk Bone Rattle is our 6-mana Golgari 4/4 that has Domain of when he enters the battlefield. If you cast it, choose target creature card in your graveyard, return to the battlefield if its mana was less than Domain. Otherwise, put it into your hand. Again, it's a 6-mana 4/4 that eventually gets a creature back to the battlefield. Kind of a 2-for-1 there, but also gets a creature back to hand if you really needed to. Take a look at Tura. Kenrud Sky Knight is our 5-mana Azorius 3/3 with flying. It says when you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/1 soldier token. Again, not only having the evasion, but the ability in an Esper build or even just an Azorius build to cast a bunch of instants and sorcery spells and get a benefit with no extra ability. Seems worth it. Definitely be playing it. Rulik Mons is Warren Chief is our 4-mana Gruul 3/3 with Menace. It says whenever it attacks, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put that onto the battlefield tapped. If you didn't put the card into the battlefield this way, create a 1/1 red goblin token. Again, it's some weird pseudo ramp, but also aggro, your choice. It's good stuff. Queen Alanol of Rudok is our 3-mana Selesnya XX that says her power and toughness is equal to the number of creatures you control. So just her coming in makes her a 1/1. If one or more creature tokens would be created under control, create an extra one. Again, tons of soldier tokens coming around everywhere. Tokens are a real thing in Limited. She'll definitely prove her worth, and she'll get much bigger than you think. Najala the Storm Runner is our 5-mana Izzet 5/4, so just on the cost right there is good enough. She says whenever you may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. Everything's an instant now. Love it. Whenever Najala the Storm Runner attacks, you may pay 2. If you do, when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. Again, there's a number of copy spells, and there's plenty of spells worth copying, with many benefits just for playing spells. So, definitely good in a instance and sorcery build. Tori de Avanat Fury Rider, definitely didn't say that right, is our 4-mana Boros 3/3 with Vigilance and Trample. It says when it attacks, all other attacking creatures you control get +1/+1 till end of turn. Other red creatures you control get Trample. Other white creatures you control untap. So basically Vigilance. Again, great with wide boards. Definitely helps with the aggro Boros build. You may lose her right away, but she's good for one big attack. Zar Ojanon, Scion of Efrava, is our 5-mana Selesnya 4/4, again with Domain. It says whenever it becomes tapped, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control with toughness less than the number of Domain you have. Again, unless is a thing, there's easy ways to tap him. Crew's still around. Even just swinging with him is going to pump your team. And lastly here, I got a little bit of a shout out. The dual lands with basic land types are very useful. Again, you may want to start picking them up a little bit sooner than you might think. Domain is very plentiful, and even if you just have 1 or 2 cards, it could benefit this. Picking these up earlier in your drafts is never going to hurt, and definitely look to play them in your sealed drafts as long as they are within your color range. They're more useful than you think, and they'll come in handy when you need it. Okay, now that we've kind of made it through the bulk of the commons and uncommons, the base of what most of your decks are going to be, I want to call out a couple rares and mythics that you might want to stay away from, but also some that you're probably going to want to have in your decks and should be auto picks as soon as you see them. So I'm going to call out a couple traps here. We're definitely going to start with Urza's Assembly as a rare. It is a 5-mana saga with read ahead that says scry 4, then you may reveal a top card of your library. If it's a Planeswalker card, revealed this way, put it in your hand. For the second one, you may put a Planeswalker card with mana value 6 or less from your hand onto the battlefield. And for the last one, you may activate loyalty abilities of planeswalkers you control twice this turn rather than once. You can kind of see where I'm going with this. There's not a ton of planeswalkers unless you get super lucky and happen to get both of them in the same build. Even then, I still probably wouldn't play it because the chance of getting them both on the battlefield at the same time, highly unlikely. So if you need it for something else and you're just trying to rare draft, maybe pick it up, but please avoid at all costs if you see this thing. Let's talk about Chaotic Transformation as a 6 mana sorcery that says exile up to one target artifact, target creature, and target enchantment, and potentially planeswalker if you want, and up to one target land, I guess. For each permanent exiled this way, its controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a card that shares a type with it. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle. Sounds really cool, but kind of on base value, you're probably only going to get 2 of all of those listed. And even then, you're rolling the dice. Who knows what's going to come off the top of your deck? You may get a 1-drop. It's not a good trade. It's too risky. I wouldn't try it. Shadowrite Priest here is our 2-mana 2/2 Cleric Lord. I don't know if you know, but there's not a ton of clerics in this set that are actually worth playing. So for base value, he's basically just going to be a 2-mana 2/2. Because his ability says sacrifice another cleric. So sadly, you can't sacrifice him to really get the full use of it. I guess if you need a 2-drop on a rare, go for it, sure. Ivy Gleeful Spell Thief is a Simic 2-drop 2/1 flying. She's fine for that, but her ability makes it really, really scary. Yes, you might be thinking, well, I can pump her and the rest of my team. It sounds great. But they can also throw out a kill card and kill her and another creature you control. Just be very careful about it. It's a two-edged sword there. Just keep an eye on it, okay? The Raven Man is a 2-mana 2/1 at the beginning of your end step. If a player discarded a card this turn, create a 1/1 Blackbird with token with flying that says this creature can't block. Okay, you may pay 4 to tap it, and each opponent discards a card, activate only his ability. There's not a ton of discard spells. There's not even a ton of self-discard spells. So to get the ability and get a 1/1 flyer, I mean, maybe if that means something to you, but more often than not, it's really slow and the payoff is hard to make payoff. Again, if you need a rare and a 2/2 or a 2-drop, go for it. Stronghold Arena is a 2-mana enchantment with kicker of green and or white. It says when it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life for each time it was kicked. Whenever one or more creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, you may reveal the top card of your library and put it into your hand. If you do, lose life equal to its mana cost. Limited is really not the place you want to be rolling those dice. You're probably going to have a wide curve in your limited build from 1 mana probably all the way up to 5, 6, 7 mana. Not only the fact that your creatures need to get through and then you may be able to draw, but life is kind of a commodity here, and you really don't want to throw it to the wind and just hope and pray that your next card isn't a 7-drop to kill you. Okay, so hopefully you took something in there. There's a ton of rares in this set again, along with the commons and uncommons that are just good cards. On their base value, whether it's mana cost or power toughness, some of the abilities that they do in between, you're going to find a use for it, and they'll fit into multiple builds and be just fine. You know, they may be a little bit better than some of the uncommons. They might be a little bit worse than some of the uncommons. But no matter what, they just aren't bad, and they're worth playing. These next 5 cards are the bombs that I'm considering something should be auto picks when you see them pop up. So I'm going to start with Weatherlight Completed is a colorless 2-mana 5/5 with flying. Kind of. As long as Weatherlight Completed has 4 or more Pheresis counters on it, it's a Phyrexian creature in addition to its other types. Whenever a creature you control dies, put a Pheresis counter on it, then draw a card if it has 7 or more, otherwise scry. Okay, so again, limited, you're going to have a ton of creatures. Creatures will be dying. As I said, the Phyrexian Vivisector does very similar things. It's a 2-mana creature, but when a creature dies, you scry. That's the base value. As soon as 4 creatures have died, you're ending up with a 5/5 flyer that will just draw you cards by creatures dying. Like, I don't know what's wrong with that. Plus, it's colorless, so it literally fits into every single deck. and can never really go wrong. Even on late game, creatures will still be drawing, you'll still be getting the scry, and it's very hard to get rid of. Not only for when it becomes a creature, it has great evasion and is big, but it also just sits on the side as an artifact. There's not a ton of artifact removal. Auto pick for me, not sure about you, let me know in the comments. Still kind of playing on that creature mentality, Quarian Beastcaller is a 2-mana 2/2. Again, cost for value, great start. But whenever you cast a creature spell, put a 1/1 counter on it. It's just going to keep getting bigger. It's very similar to that. Is it red instant sorcery dude that just gets bigger on instants and sorceries? But in limited, you're going to be playing more creatures than you are instants and sorceries. The fact that it just gets bigger is great, but when it dies, you may distribute its 1/1 counters to any number of target creatures you control. So when it dies, it's still giving that benefit to the board that you already have. It's a threat early, it builds fast, and its power remains on the board when it's gone. Definitely an auto pick for me, especially since I love green in limited. I don't know if you've played with it yet, but literally any of the defilers are great. They fit into any of the main color builds, especially, let's just call it out. The green one is probably the best, especially for limited. Being undercosted for its value, a 5-mana 6/6 with trample is great on its own, but plus all the upsides. Again, every time a creature spell, a green permanent spell enters the battlefield, put a 1 counter on each creature you control. That's just crazy talk. That's just crazy talk. So it comes in, it's a power on its own, it makes the rest of your board a growing threat. He's an auto pick, should be for you. I don't know if you're picking up a theme here, but I really like green. We're going to go talk about the Silverback Elder is a 5-mana 5/7. Whenever you cast a creature spell, choose one. You may either destroy target artifact enchantment, look at the top 5 cards of your library and put a land card from among them onto the battlefield tapped, or you gain 4 life. Again, creatures are heavy, undercosted for its power and toughness, with tons of upsides. You're going to be casting creatures. You can gain a ton of life. You can ramp really fast. You can get back your enchantments, your creature spells, or non-land permanents those enchantments have taken away, and also just gets weather lights off the battlefield. And of course, everybody's favorite, Shielder the Apocalypse, is again 4-mana 4/5 Death Touch. Whenever you draw a card, you gain 2 life. Whenever they draw a card, they lose 2 life. It can sit there until the end of the game and just win you the game. Should definitely be an auto pick, not only for limited, but just every other format. Oh, I'm out of breath, and I think I'm starting to lose my voice, but I think that's all I got. Please let me know down in the comments if there's anything that I've missed, anything that you disagree with, anything that you do agree with, any ads that you'd like to see. Let's have that discussion down there, because I'm really curious what you guys are seeing, and I want everybody else to understand too. Let them know your thoughts. The last thing I'll say is I hope you guys are getting out there, and I hope you're having a really fun time with Dominaria United Limited, but also are starting to get really excited and pulling some really good polls for some of the other formats in Arena, Standard, Explorer, Historic. Let me know what you guys are seeing. Let me know what deck builds you guys are thinking about doing. I'm all ears. We'll talk to you down in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time, guys.